Reverend Dr. Eugene L. Gibson, Jr. is the senior pastor of Mount Olivet Baptist Church. He is affectionately called Pastor Geno and is an Albertina Walker Excellence in Music Scholarship winner and served as the Minister of Music for the Missions of Faith Baptist Church in Chicago under his late father, Reverend Eugene Gibson, Sr., and at the New Faith Baptist Church in Madison, Illinois, under the pastorates of Drs. Frank Thomas and Trunell Felder. He also served as the men outreach pastor at the Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church in Memphis, Tennessee. He served as senior pastor of the Place of the Outpouring at Olivet Fellowship, where he served for 17 years. Pastor Geno holds the following degrees: a Bachelor of Theology, a Master of Arts in Religion, Urban Ministries, and a Doctor of Ministry. Pastor Gibson is an adjunct professor in the Preaching and Worship Department at both McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago and Memphis Theological Seminary, and has been a visiting professor at both United Theological in Dayton, Ohio, and Christian Theological Seminary. He is a 2012 inductee into the Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers of Morehouse College. Dr. Gibson is the husband of the beautiful former Miss Shakitha Shanice Booth. Together, they share 4 amazing children. After the next musical selection, please welcome, with a warm round of applause, Dr. Eugene L. Gibson, Jr.
Psalm 73. I heard that Jacqueline Thompson was here and just wore you guys out. I heard Willie Francois was here and wore you out. I heard Tish Dixon Williams was here and wore you all out. And so I'm just going to do my part, and then we're going to get on out the way. Get out my part. The Bible says, Psalm 73, we'll look at 1 through 3 and then skip to 17. It says, "Truly God is good to the upright, to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled, and my steps had nearly slipped. For I was envious of the arrogant, and I saw the prosperity of the wicked." Read that again. It says, "Truly God is good to the upright and to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my foot had almost stumbled, and my steps had nearly slipped, for I was envious of the arrogant and saw the prosperity of the wicked." Skip to the 17th verse. It says, "Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I perceived their end." And I want to preach with the aid and assistance of the Holy Spirit, as well as your prayers, from wicked to woke. From wicked to woke. You may be seated in the presence of the Holy Spirit. From wicked to woke. And I would that you would flank me with your prayers. From wicked to woke. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, because of the wonderful things he does. Undoubtedly, most of us know these iconic words from the 1939 movie, The Wizard of Oz, that we saw in our youth and comes on every holiday season. Some of us even remember the remix version of the song that said, "Come on, ease on down, the road," from the chocolate-covered offering of a movie, The Wiz, produced by Motown's Berry Gordy and with music by late mega producer Quincy Jones. Both were adapted from the story that poured off of the pen of L. Frank Baum some 125 years ago. In the Baum work, Baum chronicles the exploits of the Lion, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and Dorothy Gale. Much to his surprise and the shock of many others, it became one of the most well-loved and most recognizable and iconic stories in all of the history of American culture. That's no wonder that in 1995, Gregory Maguire, a Ph.D. in English, while wrestling and studying the existential presence and power of systemic evil in children's literature, was drawn to the bomb narrative. McGuire wanted to understand why evil characters in children's book were evil without explanation. He wanted to know why they had no background story, no qualifying narrative, or even an origin. They were just mean and evil for no reason. McGuire took issue with this and wrote a masterful book that became a Tony-winning play and even a more amazing movie called Wicked. Wicked is the prequel to the Wizard of Oz franchise, in which McGuire tells the story of what happened before Dorothy and the other three were off to see the wonderful Wizard of Oz. He tells the story and introduces us to Elphaba. She's an incredibly gifted young woman who's mistreated and maligned even by her stepfather, partly because she was conceived in an adulterous affair, but more importantly, because of the green hue to her skin. Despite this, however, she's highly recruited into a college program where she outperforms all of the people whose skin is more acceptable than hers, so much so that she's summoned to see the wizard. You recall that the wizard is the ruler of the Emerald City. When she arrives to the city, she's more than excited, believing that the wizard can help the corruption in Oz and maybe even ease the pain and discrimination that she experiences as a woman of color. But unfortunately, when she enters the inner chamber, somebody say the inner chamber, when she gets to the inner chamber, she finds out that not only does the wizard wants to use and manipulate her real power, because he has no power of his own, when she refuses to play along with his games, he and his staff decide to use negative media trips to propagandize her as evil, call her wicked, and eventually she becomes the Wicked Witch of the West. As stated, it's an amazing book. It became an amazing play and an OMG movie. Part 2 comes out in a couple of weeks. I mean, I saw the play at least twice, but the movie blew me away. I was so blown away that I told my daughter Trinity about it, and my daughter Trinity's like Malcolm X, Martin King Jr., right? And I said to her, I said, man, I was blown away by the movie. She said, Dad, I don't know why you were blown away. It's easy. She said a black woman being green is different than a white woman being green, because a black woman knows what it is to be a woman of color and the white woman is just acting. Elphaba is treated as an enemy of the state for refusing to allow herself to be manipulated by those in power. She is maligned and seen as less than the others because of the color of her skin. This is what McGuire writes as a prequel to L. Frank Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, as he describes the story of Kamala, Elphaba in America, Oz. Yeah, he called the story wicked and revealed to us the politics at play before and in the narrative of one of the world's greatest stories. But it should be no surprise to us that there's politics at play in The Wizard of Oz. At least this is what historian Quentin Taylor argues in his 2004 article, Money and Politics in the Land of Oz. He asserts, Pastor Jason, that many of the events and characters of the book resemble actual political personalities, events, ideas of the 1890s. Don't miss this, because this will mess you up. He says that the tornado that hits Kansas in the beginning represents the economic storm that was happening back then. He says the Munchkins represent how small the people look to the corrupt government that they were citizens of. Dorothy represents the American people who had been duped and led astray by the powers that be, and she's just trying to find her way home. The Scarecrow represents the farmers who were having a tough time thinking their way out of the mess they were in. The Tin Man represented the steel industry that had no heart, putting the making of money over the safety of its workers. The Lion represented the American military that lacked courage in the late 19th century. The Poppy Field represented the pharmaceutical companies and the money being made off prescription drugs. The Emerald City is a fraudulent world built by corrupt people on green money, and the only way to get there is with a yellow brick road. Finally, the wizard is a scheming politician who uses political tricks, media devices, publicity stunts to fool the people of Oz into believing he's all wise, all powerful, and all good, when in actuality he's selfish, evil, powerless, and wicked, and guilty of stealing resources. Oh yes, there are politics in the story. Politics in this story, politics that describe a society where a small number of rich elite use their power to keep the poor masses poor, a place where a fraudulent and felonious leader who through spectacular tricks and media manipulation has duped the people into adoration, making them believe that he is for them, but he's only for himself and others like him, filling their coffers with money made off the misery of the people, not caring about humanity, only their power of money, and it is wicked. Wait a minute. Doesn't that sound strikingly familiar? It's almost as if I'm not talking about the Wizard of Oz anymore or the 1890s. It sounds like I'm talking about the wicked politics at play in these yet-to-be United States in 2025, where a wicked politician called 47 is doing his best to be a dictator and a king, one who has no real skill, aptitude, or power. He's a wizard, if you will, who uses tricks to rule because he doesn't have the intelligence or diplomacy to govern. McGuire writes the book, and he calls the story Wicked. Wicked. I mean, we know what wicked is, don't we? I mean, when I say wicked, Emmanuel, what image comes to mind? I mean, beyond the few things that carry a lot of weight sin in the traditional church, you know, stuff like drinking, smoking, drugs, fornication, adultery, divorce, and being gay. I'm talking about what is real wickedness. I ask because for me, it's no longer a witch on a broomstick with a pointy hat. To me, it's no longer a red man with horns and a pointy tail. I mean, we used to think that wickedness was white men dressed in white sheets, burning crosses in yards. But could it be now maybe that wickedness is white men with blue suits burning the tenets of our country, democracy by executive order? Maybe wicked rests in the belief that you are better than someone simply because of the color of their skin. Maybe wickedness is saying that somebody can't love the person they want to love because the person is the same gender as them. Or wickedness could be men making uterine decisions and they don't have one. I mean, how you gonna regulate women's bodies and you can't regulate guns? This must be the wrong sermon. Maybe wicked looks like those in positions of power concretizing their power by dehumanizing the powerless and calling them wicked. I mean, it's got to be wicked to have health care but vote that somebody else can't have health care. It's got to be wicked to have clean drinking water and make decisions that other people cannot have clean drinking water. Isn't it wicked to dump waste in black and brown communities but use the profits from the waste to live in gated communities? I mean, for real, Emmanuel, help me. Which is really wicked? To knock on the wall of the borders until your knuckles bleed, willing to give your life for a better future for your family? Or to, at that same border, tear children from their parents and cage them? When I say wicked, what image do you see? And if we're truthful, when we see power in high places, sometimes we can become envious. Now, I'm not talking about jealous. I'm talking about filled with resentment and filled with discontent of those who are in the high places and have all of the high perks. I mean, we won't ever say it in public, but sometimes when we see the wicked prosper, we sometimes, Lady Portia, sometimes get tired of doing right. I mean, especially when it seems that the people who do wrong get ahead, and you can become a little envious of that. I know I'm right about it, but you don't have to ask me. Just ask Asaph in our text. Asaph says, truly the Lord has been good to Israel, the upright, and those who have a pure heart. But as for me, my foot almost stumbled and my feet had almost slipped, for I was envious of the arrogant and I saw the prosperity of the wicked. This blesses me. I know y'all don't have a Christianity like this, but it blesses me that Asaph was chosen and still concerned. It blessed me that he was anointed and even part of the church leadership and the elect, but he still got frustrated. He still got envious. He still got resentful. Look at what he says again. He says, truly the Lord has been good to those with a clean heart. But as for me, Asaph, as for me, the praise leader, as for me, the church choir member, as for me, the minister of music, as for me, the deacon, as for me, the trustee, as for me, the preacher, as for me, the pastor, my foot almost slipped when I looked at the wicked and saw the prosperity of the arrogant. I mean, I pay my tithes, but sometimes my money still runs low. I mean, I'm an honest business person, but the shady people seem to get ahead. I've been presenting my body as a living sacrifice, but the people who pay to play seem like they get further than me. My foot almost slipped. Asaph, I've been in the church a long time, and I've been faithful, but almost slipped because I was envious of the wicked. And it can be frustrating sometimes, like Elphaba in the story. You realize that the powers that be, the one who should be taken care and have integrity and be responsible, sometimes are the very ones who are wicked. If you're not careful, you can become envious. If you're not careful, you can have discontent. If you're not careful, you can have resentment. We can resent them and sometimes even resent God. I mean, God, if you in charge and if you are good, why don't you step in and why are you letting the wicked prosper? You feel like God has let you down. And the thing that gets you so messed up is you want to take it to God, but your foot is almost slipping. Is it not what Asaph says in essence? My foot had almost slipped. I was tempted to think like them. I was tempted to talk like them. I was tempted to act like them. In fact, sometimes I'm even tempted to want to be like the wicked. If that's not enough, he talks about it again for 14 straight verses. Talks about 14 verses why the wicked are prospering. But then he pulls into verse 17. And when he gets into verse 17, he said, all that stuff I said was true. I was envious. I was resentful about them until I went into the sanctuary of the Lord. And then I perceived their end. This shouts me because for 16 verses, the writer is talking about the wicked. He had envy, discontent, and resentment and lament. But in the 17th verse, he went into the sanctuary. And I believe, Lady Portia, that's when he moved from wicked to woke. Can I finish it right quick? I can finish it right quick. That's when he went from wicked to woke. Woke, that term of unification coined by blues singer Leadbelly in 1931 in his song called The Scottsboro Boys. He speaks of the injustice against 9 African-American men falsely accused of rape and challenges the black community to make sure that they stay alert, awake, and woke to the realities that are facing them. Term picked up in the modern day by movements, people who emerged from slumber and became alert during a time when unarmed black, brown, and men and women were dying at the hands of law enforcement. Woke to women and girls and men, even boys being abused and worse, disappearing, sold into sex trafficking. Alert to the country's policies of the oppression of black and brown lands across the globe. To be woke is a badge of honor. The psalmist says, the one who keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Pushing it further, we know that the song of the church says, all day and all night, the angels keep watching over me. We serve, touch somebody, say, we serve a woke God. Asaph, who's been envious of the wicked, walked into the sanctuary of the Lord, and he went into the church and he understood therein. He became woke because he realized that the relief he was looking for was not in the dormant state of watching or being envious of the wicked, but in the conscious and alertness of coming and going into the sanctuary. Now, there are many ways that I could give you points for the sanctuary, but your pastor told me he's going to take me to brunch after this, so I'm going to go ahead and just give you three. I'll just give you three. First thing about the sanctuary is it's a refuge for the weary. Yeah, the sanctuary is a refuge for the weary. Since the founding of the church as an invisible institution, the church has always been a place of refuge, a haven of rest for the weary, if you will. Even in the Underground Railroad, the names of the church, Pilgrim's Rest and Haven of Rest, Traveler's Rest. It was always a place, a shelter, a safety, and protection. It's a neutral ground where my weariness is welcome. It's a place that I can struggle without fear of judgment. It's a rest for the weary. Sanctuary has other definitions though too. Check this. It's a sacred place that's free of intrusion. It's a place where predators are controlled and hunting is illegal. You do know that, and I maybe not in San Jose, but you do know there's some predators in church. There's some hunters in church. But the thing that I like about it is that in the sanctuary, predators are controlled and hunting is illegal. It's a place where my brokenness is the currency of my that finances my breakthrough, where my tears are a down payment for my joy, where my hurts translate into hallelujahs. It's a haven of rest. In fact, that's why some of y'all came today, because you were tired all week and you said, if I can just get to the church. Yeah. Listen, in my younger years, I got a motorcycle. And I was riding my motorcycle. Don't laugh at me. I had a motorcycle, and I was riding my motorcycle one day, and I wasn't really good on the motorcycle yet. I was about 45 minutes from my house, and I got a call. They said a storm is coming. And I had never ridden my bike in the rain. So I told my boy, I said, look, I got to head home. While I started riding, the rain came. It was raining so hard, and I was going down this street. It had potholes on the street. It was raining so hard that the potholes were filled with water. So I didn't know what was street and what was potholes. Boom, and I kept hitting potholes. It was so bad that the guy in the car behind me slowed down and put his flashers on because he just knew I was going to fall. But on my way home, Jay, I remember that about 4 miles ahead of me, on the right-hand side, there was a church that was under construction. And it wasn't finished yet, but it had an awning. And I decided if I could just make it to the church, everything would be all right. And I got to the church. Here's your shout. When I got to the church, again, the church wasn't finished. But I pulled under the awning, and I was dry and safe. Y'all not shouting yet. The storm was still going on, but I was safe and I was dry because I made it to the church. Is there anybody's testimony in here that the reason that you're making it is not because the church is finished? In fact, we got some more building to do. But the reason that I came is because if I can make it to the church, even though the storm is still going on, I can still be all right. I could just make it to the church. Because watch this, the church ain't perfect, but neither am I. And if I can make it to the church, everything will be all right. Yeah. Not only that, second thing, it is a mediator in troubled times. It's a mediator in troubled times. A mediator, as you know, is a go-between, one who intentionally positions themselves amid two opposing sides. One that can negotiate the reality of both sides because they place themselves in the middle. The church, watch this, becomes an incarnation of Christ. Theologically, the sanctuary becomes the place where God reconciles God's self to mankind. Are y'all walking with me? Which means that the sanctuary becomes a place where God's people can be reconciled back to God through Jesus Christ. Therefore, it's a temporary place that should be viewed through the lens of the eternal. It's a set-apart holy place where I don't have to look at my temporary problems except through the lens of the eternal realization of Jesus Christ. Y'all still not walking with me? The problem is, many times we make eternal decisions based on temporary problems. Our temporary failures are covered by the fragrance of the sanctuary. The problem is that we stress out on temporary things like they're eternal. We worry and sometimes want to quit eternally over temporary guilt, temporary pain, temporary mess, temporary sin. And the temporary should only be seen through the lens of the eternal. And that's what the sanctuary can do. Heartbreak is temporary. Heartache is temporary. Your problems are temporary. Disappointment is not forever because trouble don't last always. See if I can help you. All right. The sanctuary is where my content is more important than my context. It's where what's in me is more important than what's around me. Okay, y'all not feeling me. Here we go. When I was a kid, they called me church boy. I was a kid, they called me church boy. My dad was a pastor. My mother was a Sunday school teacher. They called me church boy. That's what they called me. Even at school, they called me church boy. And I didn't like being called church boy. I want to be a regular kid. I want to fit in just like everybody else. But they called me church boy. Yeah. I mean, when I grew up, my mother didn't work. And because she didn't work, she was at home after school. By the time I get home, she did got a snack. I got to do my homework and all that stuff. There was other kids called latchkey kids. Y'all know what latchkey kids are? Latchkey kids, right? And the latchkey kids, what they would do, they would get together at each other's house before their parents came home, right? And all manners of evil would happen at latchkey kids' house. And I wanted to be a part of the manners of evil too, but I was a church boy. My mama was at home, and I couldn't be a part of the manners of evil, right? So when I got to college, I decided that I was going to do everything that church boys. Don't be looking at me funny. Some of y'all looking at me, they say, I don't like folk that get deep in church too quick. You're getting deep like you ain't never had a manner of evil to happen in your life. Like you forget your testimony. Like you came to church and had a choir robe already on. No, the Lord had to come to the club to get some of us, come to the hotel room to get some of us. In fact, if it was not for God on your side, you still have a reefer in your pocket right now. Talking about, I decided that I wanted to do all manners of evil. And I did. I did some of it. Y'all be deep because y'all act like, when people come to church, they be like, I went to those crazy parties. Well, you went to the wrong ones. You should have hung with me because the ones I went to were all right. I was drinking them nasty drinks. You was drinking that. I should have been your bartender because I would have hooked you. So my dad, some of you knew my dad. My dad put me out the house because I was doing too much. I was just doing too much. So my dad put me out the house. I went to live with my aunt. Now, we grew up in the suburbs. My aunt lived on 79th in East End. She lived on the 79th, and people from Chicago said, whoa, that's a big change to move from the suburbs to 79th and East End. She lived right by the Regal. That's where I moved to. I moved to right there by the Regal, and seriously, that's where I live, 7812 East End. And I didn't have a job. My dad put me out, so I called one of my dudes, D, my boy D from high school. And D, let me see. D was a street side pharmaceutical rep. That's what he did. D did that for a living, and I said, D, look, let me help you out. You're on the west side. Let me help you out on the south side because I just need some money. He said, you need some money. I said, yeah. He said, you want to help me because you need some money. I said, yeah. I said, just a little bit, I'll be good. He says, wait a minute. You want to do that for me. He said, how much money you need? I said, about $500. I need about $1,000. He said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the money. But I can't let you sell because you're a church boy. You missed what I just said. Because sometimes even when we are not looking out for God, God is always looking out for us. And even when our foot almost slipped, God is still yanking us back, bringing us back because it's the sanctuary. Is a mediator between two things. All right, I'm done. The last point I have is almost an embarrassing point because it's so simple. And I know you got a Ph.D. candidate right here and all of that stuff. And I finished my Ph.D., got all them degrees. And this is a last point. But to me, if you get it, it'll make your socks go up and down. Because the truth of the matter is that the sanctuary can take you from wicked to woke. Not only because it's a place of refuge, and not only because the mediator when you're in trouble. But the last thing is, God is there. That's the last point. The reason that the sanctuary can take you from wicked to woke is because God is there. The sanctuary is God's house. David said, I was glad when they said unto me, come, let us go into the house of the Lord. You missed your shout. He said, I didn't get glad when I got there, but I got glad when they said, come, let us go to the house of the Lord. That's why you shouldn't prepare for worship when you get to the sanctuary, but you should prepare for worship even when you're at home. Then Jasmine ain't got to work hard because you were singing in the car. And by the time you come into the sanctuary, that's your second or third song because you were glad when they said, come, let us go to the house of the Lord. Sanctuary. I get excited about the sanctuary because miracles can happen there. He that dwelleth in the secret place shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord. Except Isaiah said, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and his train filled the sanctuary. Well, one thing I noticed is that when the writer talks about the sanctuary, he talks about the sanctuary of the Lord, but he doesn't say much about the Lord of the sanctuary. He talks about the sanctuary of God, but he doesn't talk about the God of the sanctuary. Y'all didn't get excited about that? Just like we sing songs of joy, but sometimes we need to leave with the joy of the song. We talk about the church of God, but every once in a while we need to fall in love with the God of the church. Because this is what separates our God from the Wizard of Oz, and what separates us from Elphaba. Because our God is not a wizard that has no power, but our God is a God that's sovereign and omnipotent, that has all power. I wonder if I got 15 people here that can get excited about the fact that your God has all power. All power. So there's a difference between the sanctuary of God and the God of the sanctuary. Let me shout you, here it is. Here's the difference. Is that the sanctuary of God has power, but the God of the sanctuary is portable. I'm going to say it again. The sanctuary of God has power, but the God of the sanctuary is portable, which means that wherever you have the God of the sanctuary, wherever you are becomes the sanctuary. Y'all not walking with me? That's the difference between religion and relationship. Religion will make you sing in the choir. Relationship will make you sing in the car. Religion will make you dance down the aisle. But relationship will make you shout in your cubicle. Because I don't just have to come to the church. I can take God with me. Yeah. Yeah. And if God is there, feel like preaching now, if God is there, anything can happen. Look at your neighbor, say anything can happen. That's the wrong neighbor. Look at one more, say anything can happen. I'm done. I don't have no shout. I just want to tell you a story. I found this out. I was talking to Lisa. You don't know Lisa? I didn't know Lisa. There, hanging out, and somebody asked Lisa, are you going to do something? She said, no, I haven't done that since my accident. Now, Lisa's sitting at the table with me. Now, I got nosy. I said, yo, you had an accident? She said, yeah. Last year, I had a stroke. Lisa about 37. I said, you had a stroke? She said, yeah. She said, you want to know what happened? I said, yeah, I want to know. I want to know what happened. She said, we were at the church, and we wwe were at the altar. She says, and I got up from the altar. She said, I was crying and my hands were lifted. She said, the next thing I know, I woke up in the hospital. They had called my family together, and I had been out 5 days. She said, I've been out 5 days. I said, wait. I'm not saying that I don't understand, but let me repeat to you what you just said to me. You said you were at the church, and you were at the altar, and you were praying and praising. I said, you got up? She said, yeah. I said, and you went out? She said, I didn't know I went out. I just know I woke up. I said, whoa. She woke up. I said, and you had been out 5 days? She said, yeah, but what was crazy, they had called my family together because they thought that I would never wake up. I was like, whoa, here's the shout. I swear this happened, and you can take it for how you want it. I said, wow. She said, but you know what I'm excited about? I said, what? She said, I'm excited that it happened at church. She said, because if I'd have been at home, I'd have been by myself. I'm glad it happened in worship because the power of God was with the people. I'm glad it happened at church. And I want to let you know the shout is that God is there and miracles can happen. Anything can happen at the church. Healing happens at the church. Deliverance happens at the church. Breakthroughs happens at the church. Marriages are fixed at the church. I get a testimony at the church. Deliverance happens at the church. Suicide is canceled at the church. Children come home at the church. Souls get saved at the church. Is there anybody in here that is excited that you came to the sanctuary and anything can happen? Truly, God has been good to the upright and those that have a pure heart. But as for me, my foot had almost slipped when I consider ICE agents in the streets of Chicago. My foot almost slipped when I see democracy being gutted by an egotistical and maniacal leader. My foot had almost slipped because of a government shutdown and people not being able to do. My foot had almost slipped when I saw the arrogance and the prosperity of the wicked until I went into the sanctuary of the Lord and I moved from wicked to woke.